lovely day so far. So I'm just going to read some and then you're going to cut me off because I don't know if I'll know how long. This is kind of a forward to the book. It's called Back to the Circle, and the book is called Short Skirts and Shorter Stories.
Hold on a second. We want to be able to hear you. You know, is this very invasive for you? Do you feel?
We're gonna switch slides.
How's that?
You comfortable?
I am.
Okay.
My life has not had the easiest trajectory. Like most people, there have been enormous ups and downs. I am a determined, tiny woman who was raised in a small town in Ohio. My nervous habits are that I fidget, iron, and bake. Boy, do I bake when I'm nervous. Popovers, breads, muffins, cookies, and cakes. I lived in Switzerland during a college internship and learned Swiss German on the spot. I tried to move back, having been so homesick that even the finest of Swiss chocolates couldn't help me. Home is northeastern Ohio. My dad was working class, second generation Italian. He built our beautiful home in a suburb. There have been a shortage of jobs in the area since I was little. I moved to New York City literally on a wing and a prayer at 19 with a short-term sublet on Avenue C and $250 in my pocket, having never even visited there before. A small-town girl gets kicked around the Big Apple pretty fast. I had 5 or 6 jobs just to survive. Some of them seemed to outsiders to be more glamorous than others. I modeled, worked on a sitcom, helped write speeches for a presidential candidate, and helped create the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I had to move around a lot and took sublets and watched cats and children in between. Finally, I met my husband, a native New Yorker, who at 23 wanted to write the great American novel and who had led a New Yorker's teenage life. He seemed exotic and troubled, and I have a big heart. After a tumultuous courtship, we got married, and within a year moved to Los Angeles to work in the biz. I never planned to live so far away from home. I found LA strange and transient. I longed for home, for my mom and dad, and for less traffic. Finally, one day we got on a hip sitcom as writers. Our days and nights were filled with work, hours and hours of it, sometimes 16 a day. I had always wanted to be a mom above all else. I prayed day and night for it. I got pregnant and miscarried during the Northridge earthquake. But one day I got pregnant with my beautiful daughter. It was a high-risk pregnancy due to my age and my relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis. My husband and I consulted on a sitcom and wrote a feature spec while I was on 5 months of tocolytics and bed rest. We finally had our miracle baby, and I was blessed with a wonderful boss who had created 3 sitcoms who let us bring the baby to work so I could nurse. Babies are wonderful for everyone. True miracles occur even around crazed office people with huge egos when a baby is around. The hardest heart can melt when a baby blows a kiss. My daughter was completely at home on the set. She learned to walk on a set with crews and actors cheering her every step. The back lots of Disney and Universal became her parks. She and her pretty nannies used their best manners to get the production assistants to cart them around on golf carts. Grandma and Grandpa visited and cooed. We ran back to Ohio for every family emergency and for as many holidays as we could. Her brother was born nearly 3 years later and is the light of all of our lives. He's a prodigy musician and loves all things American. Baseball, grandma, and apple pie. I began to grow leery of Los Angeles when my daughter entered middle school. The traffic was so bad it could take hours to travel just a few miles. The earthquakes, mudslides, and wildfires take on a different perspective when you fill out those school emergency forms. I yearned even more for home. Grandparents were getting older, and the statues won for writing and producing just looked like trophies I had to dust. I wanted my children to be able to ride their bikes and know their neighbors like I did in my youth. My path became clear after my father had to endure a terrible back surgery and my 102-year-old maternal grandfather moved from his retirement home in Florida to assisted living. My kids adjusted and flourished in Ohio. My daughters found the schools easy to maneuver. All the things I had loved when I was her age, she seemed to like. I felt stifled and lonely at first, but dove right into being a suburban mom and found wonderful things I hadn't the time for when I was growing up. Some of the most wonderful museums and libraries in the country, the best orchestra in the whole world, some of the most beautiful parks and hiking and bike trails, and great bird watching. When my husband finally decided to come east and join us, it was clear we had grown very far apart. I tried to go through the motions, but the distance and time away from each other just seemed insurmountable. I filed for divorce 1 year later, after 27 years of ups and downs, hardships, losses, great wins, and wonderful moments. I wanted a divorce that was amicable and one that would be easy on all parties. Ironically, when I filed, I drove all day and night with exactly $250 in my purse and ended up in the lap of my best friend in New York. I stayed 5 days, took many meetings, and returned home to find children who had been brainwashed that I didn't love them and had abandoned them, even though they had always known that Mommy and Daddy loved them and would always be there to love them. Turns out divorce is about war, and I am a lover and a comedy writer. The last year of my life has been filled with way too many lawyers and courthouses and paperwork, and too many people prying into private lives. My dad has suffered strokes, my mom a terrible paralysis resulting from a degenerative disease and a car accident. My children are totally estranged from me. I cried at perfect strangers on the street. Nothing has ever broken my heart more. The lawyers get involved and it becomes a feeding frenzy of hatred and lies. He said, she said. Everything I believed in has been turned upside down and inside out. True friends have stood by me day and night, telling me life will get better and not to worry. My piano teacher since the age of 7, my 3rd grade teacher, my best friends since the age of 4, no matter where they live around the world. Life is indeed a roller coaster, and this Ohioan, who became a New Yorker and then a Los Angelino, only to return back to the family circle, is hoping that the next chapters are filled with fun, adventure, travel, excitement, and lots